Joined here with head coach Jesse Scott. And Jesse, you're finally no longer a winless head coach, so that had to feel good to get the monkey off the back there in week one. And your team comes out with a pretty impressive victory. But I think most importantly, just probably felt good to get back on the field.
Yeah, it felt great to be out there with our guys on the fourth. Obviously, there was a lot of enthusiasm and passion out on the field, but it's just great to see our guys back at it again, finally, after such a long break.
I know the scoreboard can maybe take some things away of getting meaningful reps for a lot of guys, but really when you go back and look at the film, what was your overall reaction to your team's performance? And I mean, you hold them to just over 100 yards, and a lot of that comes at the end of the game. But I think there's certainly plenty of good things to take away from that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we feel like we played pretty good football on September 4th. And the challenge to our coaches and to our team in the immediate aftermath of the game was to be prepared on Monday to mine the film for everything it's worth, see all the things that we could make corrections on. There were some areas where we were able to do some things against Northwestern that won't cut it necessarily in the CCIW, and we needed to learn from those things, but still praise the really good things we had. We won the turnover battle by 2. We almost had 3 if it weren't for a penalty. We didn't have ball security issues. We did a pretty decent job of managing 5-yard penalties. We still have to do a little bit better there. So there were a lot of positive takeaways from our performance on the fourth.
Yeah, you mentioned the penalties, and I think the overall number might be a little bit deceiving because you kind of expect those personal fouls in week one because everyone's happy to get back out there and maybe a little over-energetic. So when you look at that aspect of it, is that kind of what you saw driving maybe a few of those personal fouls?
A little bit, and a penalty where somebody just makes a blatant mental error that they could have prepared for and then not made, as opposed to a penalty that comes as the result of playing hard, are two just fundamentally different things. The latter doesn't bother me nearly as much as the former, and that doesn't mean that the latter doesn't need to be corrected. It does, but our approach to those two things is a little bit different.
Yeah, and certainly those things get cleaned up. I mean, pretty obvious to say the biggest opportunity for growth for a team comes from game 1 to game 2. And I think when you look at the film, I think the offense probably sees some opportunities for points that were left there. So I think a lot of those things probably and get cleaned up just with having the time now that you've got game reps. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. Yep.
And when you look at those, I mean, you had some plays in the passing game that were there. Is that one of those things that when you look at on film, that's like, man, that's something that maybe now that we've got live reps, you hit timing on those plays or that throw gets made in week 2?
Yeah, I think that you look back and you watch that film, you see opportunity for us to play a lot more cleanly and more efficiently than we did on September 4th. And there were some batted balls at the line of scrimmage that we have to come up with some schematic ways to prevent. But then there's also some missed opportunities to connect on some wide open plays down the field. And those things come with reps and time. And we've had 2 more weeks now of reps and time on top of that game experience. So we're confident about where we're at and that we'll be playing even more efficiently tomorrow night than we were 2 weeks ago.
When you look at the schedule, it is on one hand nice to have 2 weeks to prepare for North Central and the rivalry game, but on the other hand, once you get going, it's kind of nice to stay going. So now that you're on the back end of this, play a week, off a week, what's really the thought for you guys moving forward on if that's a beneficial way to look at things or if that's maybe something to adjust in future schedules?
We approached last week a little bit differently than sometimes we have in the past in a bye week. It's so early in the season. We've only played 1 game still in the last 2 years. So there was a lot that we needed to do. And one of the big points of emphasis for us last week was to create competition and to do good on good. We had some service periods with 1s on 2s and 2s on 1s on either side of the ball. And then we had plenty of periods with 1s on 1s to make sure that the speed, the intensity, the physicality were there to prepare for an opponent like North Central. And I think that was definitely a valuable approach in our bye week.
Certainly valuable too, where they only have 1 week to prepare for you guys after having to deal with a top 25 team. But it's a very different North Central team, but a very also a lot of continuity from that team that we saw 2 years ago. So how do you kind of manage your team's emotion leading into this game? Because I know there's a lot of emotion for a team that you beat that you have to then watch, and a rival have to then watch have the end of the season that they had last year.
Yeah, our guys are incredibly motivated for this game on Saturday night, and they have been for a long time. Pat Coleman tried to bait me a couple weeks ago into talking about the Little Brass Bell game in an interview the week before our game against Northwestern, and I played that down pretty significantly. But this game's been asterisked on our calendar for a long time, and to deny that would be to be lying to anybody who knows our program and knows the significance of this game to our players and to our team. So we're excited about the opportunity to go out there. The mental framework we want our players in is to understand that this is going to be a 15-round championship fight. This is not going to be a game that's won in round one. It's not going to be won in round 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. And when we step into that arena, we are going to catch punches in the jaw at some point in time. And there's got to be a response from our team to swing back, to deliver 3 of our own in response to the ones we know we're going to receive. So getting our players in the frame of mind where this is going to be an extremely physical game, and we have it in ourselves to respond with yet more physicality is the way that we're trying to approach Saturday night.
Yeah, have leading up to this, have you felt like you've had to keep the dogs on the chain a little bit? Because it's one thing to, man, when you turn the page and get going, but you've had 2 weeks here where you kind of have to say, hey, we don't need it all on Tuesday after Northwestern. We need to kind of slowly build this thing up to where when we take the field Saturday night, we're ready to finally go at that 100%.
I'd say our approach is it has a little bit of that in mind, but we frame it a little bit differently. Each player responds a little bit differently in their prep to a game like this. I mean, there are guys who are going to be nervous and anxious on Tuesday at practice as they're going to be at 5:59 on Saturday night. And that's not a bad thing. Those butterflies and those nerves are going to be there. Our players need to be able to channel them and to prepare well. So our challenge to our players has been to prepare well through the course of this week, to visualize success, to review the game plan, to establish confidence, to believe in what we're doing and who we're doing it with, and to trust that each guy is going to navigate that a little bit differently. Some guys are going to sit down and ingest 45 minutes of film at exactly the same time every single day, while some guys are going to sit down with a couple of teammates in their position group and review it together. Other guys are going to come up to review the game plan with the coaching staff, and all of those things contribute to really good prep. So just making sure that our team realizes that the Saturday night is in the details and in our preparation, making sure that we're doing that well. We've given them some freedom to navigate exactly what that looks like.
You've had a chance to watch the post Brock Rudder offense. Now, in a lot of ways, it's the same because you have a lot of the same skill guys there, especially on the outside, but a very different athlete calling things and running the system there with Luke Lane. And so how do you prepare for a lot of the same concepts, but maybe being executed with a more mobile threat and maybe not quite the polished read of Brock Rudder where he had all that experience to dwell on?
Yeah, when you watch Luke Lane and you see and watch him run the North Central offense, you see a lot of the same sort of principles that we've seen over the course of the last several years roll out there. Whether it's in the spread sets that they use, a lot of what they want to do in the run game from their heavier personnel groupings with the open-ended and closed-ended power. I mean, those themes are there in the same way they've been there in the last several years. One thing that's clear that they want to do with Luke that they didn't do as much with Brock was get him on the move. There were a lot more boot play actions than I remember seeing from Brock Rudder over the course of the last several years. Luke was involved more in the run game than Brock was in the last several years. So he certainly is a different player at quarterback. But when you watch the Aurora film, you see a guy who's really capable back there, who was plenty successful in the first start of his career. And there's no doubt that in the same way that you point to us making improvement from week 1 to week 2, Luke's going to be doing the same.
Obviously, this is a game that's going to come down to line play, and really on both when both teams have the ball. So how do you really look at that game in the trenches? And I know that's an area that you, with your background, probably focus on first.
I believe that in the game of football, games are won and lost on the line of scrimmage. And that's one of the things that we've talked about in our brand for the last really year. And I'd expand that to move beyond just the offensive and the defensive lines. And I think when some people think line of scrimmage play, it boils down to those two position groups. And in plenty of ways it does. But the game has evolved to the point where if you can't block on the perimeter, you really struggle. If you're not taking advantage of different concepts and alignments, when defenses are playing soft, you can create an offense offensive advantage on the line of scrimmage, throw balls behind the line and be blocking downfield and create significant chunk yardage. So we look at winning the battle on the line of scrimmage as an integral one in this game on Saturday night. And yes, that does place a huge premium on what's going to happen between our offensive line and their defensive line, and then vice versa between their offensive line and our defensive line. And there's quite a bit of experience in both of those units, and also some turnover as well. And it'll be interesting to see if North Central rolls out in exactly the same structure defensively as what we've seen. If I'm their coaching staff, I'm viewing Aurora's offense and Wheaton's offense significantly differently. So when we digest that film, there's some review of what they've done in years past and some anticipation of what we might get based on what we like to do that was not in the frame of thought for Aurora.
What's really the message that gets delivered, Jesse, with your program hosting such a marquee, really what could be circled as maybe the game of the year on the D3 football calendar when you look at the total landscape of things coming in, conference battle, top 25 or top 5 matchup. What does it say about where the program has risen to, where you get to play under the lights with really the whole D3 football world looking to McCully Stadium on Saturday night?
Yeah, we want to win this game really badly. But even given that, Rusty, there's a tremendous amount of respect from our program towards the North Central football program. And I think vice versa. What I believe has heightened the credibility of the CCIW in the national landscape is the rivalry between North Central and Wheaton since really about 2004, 2005, and the back and forth that's existed between the two of us. This has been two programs taking steps together because of the quality of competition between each other for a long period of time. And we've had several now, I think at least 2, if not 3 top 10 matchups between North Central and Wheaton in the past 12 years. And now we've got an opportunity for there to be a top 5 matchup, and we have the opportunity to host. So we're really excited about Saturday night and looking forward to competing and getting after it and playing to keep the Little Brass Bell.